Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown channel. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Umir, who's a professional football scout and analyst. And this week we're here to look at Matheus Cunha and why he could be the man to fix Ruben Amorim's Manchester United. Right, so kicking right off with Matheus Cunha this season, I've got like a few top line stats to just illustrate how good he has been this season. So he's got 21 goal involvements this season in the Premier League, 15 goals, 6 assists, and he has currently the joint most goals of a Brazilian in a single Premier League season. So if he scores one more goal in the Premier League this season, he will take the record, and he's joint with Gabriel Martinelli and Roberto Firmino, which shows the kind of level he's playing at the moment. And I also want to show that he is the third for XG performance in the Premier League this season, which is showing that he's potentially overperforming a lot more than prior seasons, which we'll get into a little bit later. But just a top line on Matheus Cunha. I think me and you have been quite a big fan of him as an individual.
Yeah.
And I just want to, before we go into how he could maybe look in a Manchester United, what do you think of him as a player individually for Wolves in the past couple of seasons?
I think for the past couple of seasons, he's generally been a strong player, but this season he's taken his qualities to the next level. With a lot of players for teams lower down the table, it's often an individual player who kind of takes them to that next level and shoulders a lot of that responsibility. Cunha's exactly been one of those players this season, and been a big part of why they've avoided that relegation battle, particularly at this point in the season. He's somebody who takes chances and takes opportunities that are of low percentages, of high difficulty, and then turns them into something that Wolves can make use of. And that's often picking the ball up in quite deep areas, carrying it into the final third, and whether that's taking a shot off early, scoring free kicks. He does a lot of things quite individually, and he makes things happen for Wolves that have allowed them to get good results so far this season. When we're talking about him in the context of United, we'll get into it, but how well does that scale for a team who want to play slightly differently? It's an interesting question, but as an individual player, a brilliant player, and somebody who has taken that responsibility for Wolves massively this season.
So just moving on to Wolves since Vitor Pereira's come in, who's obviously been the manager who has gone on a hell of a run since he's come in, and I want to talk about his usage of Matheus Cunha and why that might actually scale quite well for Ruben Amorim's Manchester United. So on paper, Wolves do play a 3-4-2-1, and Matheus Cunha does play as these left 10, which I'm getting tired of talking about. But left 10, a little bit narrower inside the half space with an overlapping left wing back in Aït-Nouri, who, as we watched at the Leicester game, for the goal that Matheus Cunha scored in the Leicester game, we can see the combination play off Ryan Aït-Nouri and kind of the technical balance between the two. And I think it's something that Manchester United have obviously been talking about, like the wing backs and are they good enough? Is that the bit that needs fixing the most in a Ruben Amorim system? And to just further emphasise how much Matheus Cunha is playing in this left pocket here, which is where you'd expect a Ruben Amorim left 10 to play, we can see from his chance creating carries map that a lot of them are coming from the left half space, so the bit between the left flank and the middle of the pitch. And if we can also see from his percentage touch map, we can see he's having 10% of his touches actually in this space, but then more moving inside with 5, 6, 7% more in the centre there. So it's very key that I think they've almost looked at Matheus Cunha, and I reckon he's been a name on the wish list for quite a while. We've been linked with him quite heavily when he was at Atletico Madrid, Hertha Berlin. I think he was always someone that Manchester United were very interested in. But I think he's developed into this player that when you look at the way Wolves are playing systematically and structurally, it almost does feel like a key fit. And obviously I think Matheus Cunha could probably play false 9 as well, or just play as a number 9 anyway. He's done that before. I reckon he could probably play left 10, right 10, and he could be very versatile in that. And I think we will speak in a minute about how good he is when he moves into these sort of deeper pockets. But I do think it's interesting that Wolves are a very counter-attacking team. And I think most of the teams who are playing 3-4-3 in the Premier League at the moment, think of Crystal Palace, who watched them in the FA Cup at the weekend. They are very much counter-attacking teams, and Matheus Cunha is one of the best carriers in the Premier League. He's got 135 10-plus metre progressive carries, which is around 8 or 9th in the Premier League, which is just showing how much he's, how much quality he's got when he's on the run, moving forward.
And the distance, actually, that means he's picking up from
big
quite
spaces.
deep and taking it quite far.
He's also won the most fouls in the final third, and he's actually the second most overall fouled player in the Premier League. So that just shows that, again, when he's breaking through, there's a lot of dark arts dragging him down. I think 2 players got butts at the weekend for Leicester just for bringing him down on the break. And how do you imagine that piece of Matheus Cunha? So he's a very small space player. He's got really good technical execution in the pocket, but he is a player who likes to run deep runs in through the pitch. You can imagine him pick up the ball here, right through the pitch. How do you see that scale into a Ruben Amorim team that, in my opinion, whilst Manchester United are currently trying to adjust to his system, have been very static and high up the pitch, but not a lot of space for anyone to play in?
Yeah, so all depends on actually what style Amorim goes with, because I think we know that he's not going to change his shape. But there's different implementations of that 3-4-2-1 shape that you can look to, and that's across football in general. If you look at sort of the way that Inzaghi at Inter uses his 3 at the back system, there's a lot of fluid rotations, it's a lot quicker, and they tend to play with slightly less possession, but they can keep the ball. When you look at some of the teams in the Premier League that have similar shapes, that have found some success, obviously Wolves, like you mentioned, are a team that play in the same shape, but play in a very transitional manner. You look at Crystal Palace, again, they have had a lot of success with that shape, but they don't keep much of the ball, and then they break and play in transition. We know that Amorim's actually spoken about wanting to keep this shape, but play higher up the pitch and keep the ball and pen teams in. And we saw that a little bit with the Sporting side, but against top opposition, they were still penned back in. Now, bringing all of this back to Cunha's quality and how transferable it is, in situations where big spaces open up and they want to play a bit more direct, I certainly think that he'll be amazing at doing so. I think generally Amorim wants to move towards penning teams in, and in those situations, I question where Cunha's best role would be. In a sense, I think he profiles almost like a third midfielder in a 4-3-3, which is not the system that they play. He feels like a slightly less polished, like Mamouche kind of player. So when teams are penned in deep, how are Manchester United going to use him? I think when he floats out to the wing, he has these sort of looping crosses to the back post that are hit and miss. Around the edge of the area is these good shots that, from distance he can score from, but they're also, again, slightly inconsistent. From the right-hand side, he has these good whipped crosses, but generally we think of him as a left-sided player. So he, around the edge of the area, when teams are penned in, I think we would see some of those qualities. But like we saw at Sporting, when the Amorim's teams are building up a little bit deeper, they try to, in building up deeper, still attack a little bit more quickly. And in those quick sort of manufactured transition moments, he'll be brilliant. And in that sort of in-between few months or maybe next season, when they are still getting to grips with that system and they are defending deep and they need someone to carry them up and bring that pressure into something useful, then I think he can still do that, like he would have been useful for Manchester United this season.
Yeah, so I think talking about his profile, obviously, we've been a bit sceptical of maybe his usage in a static possession team, because obviously Wolves use actually quite a lot of rotations when they're on the ball, and it's a lot of, free-flowing positioning, and we can see from that touch map where he's constantly drifting out wide and he's coming a bit deeper. It's a bit different to how Amorim likes to see his 3-4-3. It's a lot more static, high up. Wing-backs have a lot of responsibility in terms of beating their full-backs 1v1, and it does feel like we're being a bit negative on the signing, but I am actually a huge fan. And this is something that, for once, me and you are actually going to disagree on. But we want to speak about how risk-taking, and we call these players like forcing the issue players. And we can see from his goal and shot map this season, there is a ridiculous amount of shots coming from outside the box. He has a 0.08 XG per shot, which is a relatively low value for each shot he's taking. So obviously he's taking low quality shots.
Or shots from distance. I know we can put them away,
but obviously we can't say that they're not working, because only Bruno Fernandes has scored as many goals from outside the box and as Matheus Cunha in the Premier League, which leads us on to something that you spoke about in detail online, and obviously we've just spoke about it off camera, but I want you to run through why you think the risk-taking nature of having Bruno Fernandes and Cunha in the same team might not work, and then I'll try my best to counterpoint that.
Yeah, I will say that there's potential for it to work, and I think you'll touch on it well, following on from what I say. This is not sort of a black and white issue, but my concern is when you look at some of the numbers that you've mentioned and just watching Cunha play in general, he's a player who likes to take a lot of touches, and temperament-wise, I always look at a player's temperament. So he's a player who takes shots early, he takes a lot of shots. Even when he drops deep into these areas, he attempts passes that seem to be quite low percentage, and he doesn't always pull them off. Now, a De Bruyne, for example, or a Trent Alexander-Arnold would attempt the same kind of passes, and Cunha sees those same kind of passes, but he doesn't have the technical consistency to execute on them as often as a De Bruyne or a Trent might. And particularly in these sort of left sort of flank areas, when he does drop deep, he does play these sort of like hopeful crosses into the box that, you know, sometimes it might be more sensible to kind of recycle and play in that sort of manner. In the same way, Bruno Fernandes, at least in seasons gone by, has played quite direct in a similar manner. Particularly edge of the area, takes a lot of shots. He wants the ball to go through him a lot. He plays with a high touch volume. Again, from these deeper areas, he plays these sort of very ambitious passes. And a couple of times in the game, it might work, and then you'll get your goal, and you know, all is fine. But for an Amorim side who might not have the best 1v1 defenders at the back, to play in these ways where you're kind of giving up opportunities for the opposition to counter-attack you, and you're losing that control in general, then I think having two players who are of a similar temperament, who play with a lot of touches, who force the issue a lot, who take a lot of shots from distance, they're almost encroaching on each other's best quality. Now, obviously, Bruno, we've seen him play a little bit differently this season, dropping in and playing in that pivot, and I think you'll probably touch upon, if they are to work, why that might be the case.
Yeah, so it's actually funny, you took the words right out of my mouth, because that's what was going through my head all the time. But yeah, so I think, I agree with what you're saying. I agree that both players are force the issue players. I would also counter that by saying, I think Manchester United lack a lot of force in the issue of the players in the squad. I think I look at Rasmus Højlund not really getting touches of the ball. I think Alejandro Garnacho is this player who's still very raw, and I think he's been ran into the ground a bit, and he doesn't have any sort of physical or technical, like, you know, power in his game to be like a cut above the rest. I think the wing backs still aren't really suited to, you know, play in this system. I don't think they look natural in the final third. And I think when Manchester United have got the ball this season under Amorim, in a lot of Premier League games, we often speak about on the channel, they get into the final third, but it's the other bit. It's the bit that just can't seem to put the ball in the box or force the issue. And I think Bruno Fernandes has not somewhat developed under Amorim. I think it's just something, as you just mentioned, as he's got older, and I think he's done it for the national team a bit more. And I think because he's the captain and he's got a closer relationship with Amorim, he's took this, you know, this sort of responsibility to, be this game state changing, goal out of nowhere, assist out of nowhere player. When he plays up here in one of the 2-10s, I think he can do that. But as you mentioned, he has played a little bit deeper, and I think with the signing of Manuel Ugarte, Kobbie Mainoo, Eriksen, Casemiro, very few of them are expansive passers. I think Kobbie Mainoo, for all of his quality, and believe me, I'm one of the biggest fans of Kobbie Mainoo, he doesn't, you know, pick a pass for 50 yards. It's the same with Ugarte. Short distances in small bits of play. So we kind of need Casemiro or Bruno Fernandes always in the midfield too, because they have got range in the game and they can stretch the game. And I don't think I need to explain why stretching the game is so important, especially for a team that is not fluid. You know, you want to make the pitch wide and you want to attack spaces. So I think Bruno Fernandes long term might actually play in the pivot. I don't believe it's the best usage.
Fine, that was my question.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that, but I don't think it's the best usage. But I think
it works.
I think it works, and I think he's still good enough to produce ridiculously good moments. And I think if he's partnered with someone like Casemiro, doesn't have to be Casemiro, but someone who can let him go a bit forward. And at times under Ruben Amorim this season, we have gone to more of a 3-1-6, so we've just got one sitter, and then once we get high, then your pivot player can push on a little bit more, and he can be around the area.
Yeah.
And I think I agree with what you're saying about the risk taking, and like, I'm trying to be as like level-headed with my own club when analysing a player who comes here. But I think I look at Manchester United and I think we lack X factor in between the half spaces. And I think when we're around the penalty area, I'm looking at Garnacho is like a really low efficiency player. Like he takes 10 tries to get 2 balls into the box, stuff like that.
But he has good movement and he gets into those areas, but he doesn't have that sort of decisive
have the final
quality.
thing. With Cunha, I feel like he's got that personality and that kind of confidence, and the fact that he's proven, he's physically built for the league, and we're speaking about him over large distances, which is a massive plus for me, because we've spoken about how bad United are when going both boxes running. I think he's got power. He strikes the ball cleanly.
Presses and defends well, which is important.
And yeah, I think all the negatives around the signing, or all the grey areas for me, aren't actual footballing quality. I think he has unbelievable footballing quality.
I agree with that, by the way.
But I think a lot of it is systematic and personality, which is obviously something that we'll have to speak about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a good point to raise, and I think it's a great counterpoint, because maybe there is too much Hollywood balls sometimes. But I think United this season, I would much rather see us play a low percentage game and force the issue a little bit more, because I'm a bit tired of the slowness and the stagnated passing around the blocks. I want someone to get on the ball in the pocket and force a shot in, force a crossing. We don't score scruffy goals anymore. It's just it's a bit lackadaisical. So is there anything else you would want to say on that before we move into
just a quick
final
one?
bit?
I will say, with regards to that, I do think he's a brilliant player and he has the qualities to shine. Yeah. Regardless of whether he's at Wolves, United, somewhere else. But my only question is, it's a matter of expectation. Will Manchester United fans want him to put up the same numbers that he's putting up at Wolves? Probably. They probably want him to score more.
Probably.
But now, if his touches and his influence and his, the amount of shots that he's taking from distance are minimised, if the space that he's getting is minimised because you're playing a slower game and you're pinning teams in, and he's putting up fewer numbers, he's not suddenly a worse player. He's just being used in a manner that's not maximising his quality. And I think he does improve Manchester United in their attacking quality, but his numbers might drop because he's being presented with a different situation that doesn't maximise his qualities in the same way that Wolves have done so far.
Right, and then moving on into probably the final coverage of the analysis, so we'll give our final thoughts, and then I want to touch on one thing, because as analysts, it's a very hard thing to look at and analyse and proper speak about and understand, because we don't have the due diligence perspective of a club. But there has been this thing about Matheus Cunha potentially having attitude problems or personality issues, and there was a graph that was doing the rounds from Opta the other day that said that he has the most time spent walking in the Premier League, and I think people have took that, run with it, and said that he's not hard-working, where in my opinion, this is a Red Bull forward, believe me, he's hard-working. I want to speak to you about, has he got the capability to work hard, to press well, and obviously this personality thing, which I think is the hardest thing to see through. It's hard, but just give your thoughts on it.
I'll say, in terms of the walking statistic, I don't necessarily buy into that as a raw statistic, because you need to contextualize everything. Wolves are a team that, for most games, sit deep, and if he's somebody who's playing in the front line, particularly, he's often bypassed. So you press initially. If your pressure is bypassed, you sit into your shape. And when you're sitting into your shape, you're jogging side to side to block space, and then you might jump to press your man. But in general, he's not somebody who is tasked with doing that often. Secondarily, for the amount of goals and assists and the big distance that he's covering, he needs to conserve his energy at some point. So the fact that he can carry the ball from the edge of his area all the way into the final third and draw a foul many times a game is testament to the fact that he's conserved his energy in a sensible manner. Now, if he moves to United and they ask him to press high, and the idea is to have your defenders on the halfway line and play high up here, he's not going to need to make these long carries all game, so he's going to be able to press a little bit better. And the fact that he's walking doesn't mean that he doesn't have the energy and he doesn't have the intensity. It just means he's using it in a different manner. So I don't buy that, and I think you can only accommodate maybe one player like that in your team, but he's by far the best individual for Wolves in this moment, so it's fine. I don't buy that. And like you mentioned, Red Bull. Like,
and Atletico Madrid.
If you survive that, both of those, like you're incredible defensively. On his personality outside of that, I think it's very hard to judge, and I wouldn't make any sweeping judgments. I think oftentimes when you're on social media, when you're seeing these Instagram comments or Instagram stories, oftentimes he's speaking in a language that's not his first. And secondarily, like, things are never taken with tone in mind. You can't really read tone in a comment like that. So I think all you can do is probably go off of what previous managers have said, and his application there. I've obviously not done that research to know what his previous coaches, what his previous managers have said, what his previous teammates have said. At the top level, clubs need to do that research.
The level of due diligence on this signing has to be, because the quality's not the issue here. It's grey areas like we're talking there.
Yeah, do they come to training late? What's their general lifestyle outside of the club? What's their do they fit in with our club culture?
Yeah.
The fact that he's played for teams like Atletico Madrid and Red Bull is a testament to maybe playing in that quicker way that Man United want to play in, that more end-to-end way. At Wolves is in line with some of those old Manchester United attackers where you attack quickly, you play with 1 or 2 touches, you take an exciting shot.
Yeah.
So generally, as a footballer, he kind of fits with that sort of typical Manchester United mould of footballer, that exciting footballer, but personality, I think, as somebody from the outside, I would be hesitant to judge.
I think it was really interesting that after all the stuff happened on the social media, I think he scored against Spurs actually, and I think he went off to the fans and did like a love heart thing and was like going like that around the stadium, and I was a bit like, I don't know what to think here. Joe, and I think footballers, they say stuff, it gets taken poorly, and then it's like, Jesus, what have I done here? Let me try and fix this. I don't like football. I'm not going to say I don't like footballers speaking out. I do like footballers speaking out, but I just don't really. It's hard to grasp what's going on with them, and I'd rather them say it in an interview, for example, than.
But even then, someone will take those quotes and put it into words.
Yeah.
And then that gets taken out of context. Yeah. It's very difficult for footballers.
Yeah. It's a club responsibility. This, we had Patrick Montgomery on, and he was saying that at Liverpool, the due diligence that went into players like Salah, Mane, they knew that they were coming from humble beginnings, and they knew they were hungry characters who were chomping at a bit to win a league with an underdog, and they've been through a bit of tough times when they were younger, so they had that Liverpool aspect to them, and I love that idea of looking at signings like that. Yeah. And when I look at Cunha when he plays, I look at a player who's expresses himself. He's got a personality on the pitch. I love that about him.
He's not afraid of playing through bad moments.
I think he's really scruffy but technical at the same time. He's really, he's a true Brazilian attacker, and I love that. And United haven't had many that have worked out. So I think if Matheus Cunha is to work out, it'll be a brilliant signing. And there's no shade on the individual quality of this player, in my opinion, because he has been one of the best players in the Premier League this season. And would you 62.5 million is the reported fee? Do you think that's fair?
I think for quality of a player, it's fair.
Yeah.
But it's only going to look like it's fair if he's utilised to his strengths.
Yeah.
And my question mark is, will Amorim utilise him in a system globally that makes him look a player worth that quality? Yeah. I think he's a less polished Marmoush. I can't remember how much Marmoush was. I think we actually got Marmoush.
Similar one.
Yeah. I think we got him on a big bargain. Yeah. But again, you're paying for Premier League quality.
I like that idea. Yeah, I like that.
So for me, I think I wouldn't say it's a massive overpay, but
in terms of what the United squad needs, like collectively, I think we maybe need another midfielder, another wing back, maybe even another 10.
Yeah, so that's where my only question mark comes. Yeah. Like, for example, if an Arsenal bought Cunha, played him behind Havertz for 62 million, I'd say brilliant signing.
Brilliant signing.
So the fee is not the problem for me. It's about if he will be used to the best of his qualities, because we know he's a brilliant footballer.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Right, thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy, please don't forget to like, comment and follow the channel. And let us know what you think about Matheus Cunha as a player. And we'll see you next week on The Overlap Page.